Hello, everybody, and welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast with me, James Dickson, wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you tune into today's podcast from. The Event Industry News podcast is brought to you by Present Communications, the podcast's headline sponsor. Present provides a broadcast quality live, hybrid and virtual event production trusted by organizations where reliability really matters. From corporate town halls and conferences to high-profile live streams, they deliver and design fully resilient systems that work first time. Our thanks to our sponsor, Present Communications. And into today's episode. Very excited about today's episode because I get a chance to talk to somebody who I have chatted to and had the pleasure of sort of meeting, always kind of in fleeting 5 or 10 minute bursts for about the last 15 years or so, but who's somebody who it's long overdue a chat on the podcast to talk about what they do and what they do and have done in the industry for many years. I'm delighted genuinely to say that my guest today is Johnny Lance from the Showman's Show. Johnny, a very warm welcome for the first time to the podcast.
Hello, James. It's lovely to see you, and many thanks for having me here.
No, absolute pleasure. Loads of stuff to talk about today. Genuinely can't believe this is the first time that we've had you on the podcast to talk about the Showman Show. My experience of it goes back pretty much equally to the time that I've been a freelancer in the events industry. I accidentally became self-employed in 2010, in September 2010, and in October 2010, I attended my first ever Showman's Show alongside my good friend Paul Allott from Event Industry News, and it's actually, I'm sort of shivering to say this, been several years since I've actually been back there. I was there for several years at the start of my career, and then as luckily as the calendar fills up, I've always been busy at that time of year, which is why perhaps I've never maybe had a chance to talk to you properly about the show and get you on the podcast. But it's great to have you here. For those who don't know about the show, tell us a little bit about the show, what it is, how it started. Let's start at the beginning.
Of course. Well, the Showman Show is a trade show and exhibition for the outdoor and special event industry. It's a family business. It was set up by my father and my mother back in 1984. And it was actually born out of a directory that they were producing called the Showman's Directory, which was like a yellow pages for event supplies, which they worked on since the 1960s. And it was basically an idea that was formed in a pub with my dad and his best friend who worked on the event scene. And they basically said, well, let's bring this printed directory to life. Let's get all these contractors and services in a field. Let's get them meeting and talking and engaging with the industry. And that's when the Showman's Directory Comes to Life was born. So the Showman Show hasn't always been called the Showman Show. It was originally called the Showman's Directory Comes to Life. Now, but not a particularly catchy name, so it was eventually abbreviated to the Showman Show. But that's how it came about.
Fascinating to hear it. As many of the best ideas, formed in pubs over a pint with somebody. But when you think back to it, it seems bleeding obvious, doesn't it? He had this directory for years, with the supplier lists in there. Of course, it's for outdoor event suppliers, so why not bring them together to deliver an outdoor event celebrating that outdoor industry and give people a chance to meet these people and bring them off the page and into real life?
I think that's exactly it. Bear in mind, this was the days before the internet was even invented. So it's like, where do people kind of meet? How do they engage? Apart from the kind of the events themselves are happening around the country at any one time, it's there wasn't a focal point. So that's how it was born. We pride ourselves in being the original and most comprehensive exhibition for the outdoor event industry. So.
And for any event, longevity is a great sort of desire. That there's many an event that has come and gone over the years, serving all manner of purposes, whether it be a music event or a B2B trade show. To still be here, 1984, to still be here in 2026, still at a relatively early point in the calendar year, looking ahead to the show that takes place traditionally always in October. it must make you very proud to sort of still be here and still be running something that is hugely successful, but is a real fixture on the events calendar.
It is actually, yeah, it is. When you put it like that, it is quite, yeah, it is quite significant. I mean, yeah, like I say, it's been a family business ever since. So it was set up in 1984, and now me and my brother run it. And so, you know, my parents have very kindly passed this on to the next generation. And yeah, to look back at what's happened, how it's, yeah, the many years it's been going. I mean, it's survived God knows how many recessions, you know, wars, the COVID, and we're still here. So it's, and still serving a purpose.
I guess in one respect, and I was doing a bit of thinking about this, and you know, forgive me if it gets too deep and everything, but you know, despite the obvious changes in life, you know, technology and communications and the way we communicate, the idea of an outdoor event, you know, a stage, some catering so people can eat, you know, a bar or somewhere where they can get refreshments, some entertainment on that stage, you know, a fence somewhere for people to camp in a field. You know, the fundamentals of an outdoor event, despite the evolution of technology, in many respects haven't changed much, have they? What we see today at a music festival, for example, the basics and the fundamentals are still very much what we would see, you know, at Woodstock in 1969. So I guess there's an interesting sort of, you know, paradox there when it comes to outdoor events.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously, events are temporary things, so it's hard for them to kind of change, you know, significantly in that time, because you're working on a yearly, you know, a yearly basis. So you know, but yeah, I mean, the cool things for an outdoor event are kind of infrastructure. You know, you've got to lay it down. You've got to build these cities. You've got to build these towns, and yeah, I mean, yeah, just to get people in a field and just to have a great time.
Do you think that one of the historic strengths of the event and of the brand has been that it presents itself in exactly the way that the exhibitors who are coming to exhibit their trade there do, i.e. it is a very much an outdoor event. It's at Newbury Showground. So, you know, the vast majority of your event is outside. Therefore, you are effectively dealing with the same pitfalls and the same planning and organizational issues as the visitors who are coming to your event, but also for the exhibitors who are there. Does that always sort of give you a sort of a natural synergy with the people that you're serving?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we can, yeah, basically, yeah, we have the same challenges as any other outdoor event, whether that be Glastonbury or Wimbledon or whatever. You know, we suffer the weather. You know, we suffer all sorts. So it's no, so we're kind of very much in the same boat. And we also, being at Newbury Showground, we build the show from scratch. So we're laying down the infrastructure. We're putting up the tents. We're putting up, you know, we're plumbing in the water, we're laying the power cables. So it's a blank canvas. So there's a lot of shared trials and tribulations with other, you know, public outdoor events.
Has it always been at Newbury Showground?
No, it was originally at Newark, Newark Showground. It was there for 2 years, and then it kind of moved from Newark to, you know, hovered between the two, and then we stuck at Newbury. And we just built a good relationship with the venue there. And as I mentioned, it's a blank canvas, so we're kind of free to do what we want to do, and we pass that freedom on to our exhibitors. So they're free to do what they want to do, and we want to encourage them to really use the space and the platform to their best ability. So if they want to put up a stage, you know, go nuts, go for it. If they want to put up a tent or have a party or whatever, you know, we encourage them to do so. So we've got that freedom for them to do that.
Yeah, and when it comes to showcasing your business, you know, at a trade show, you know, not that there's anything wrong with you know with the big indoor, you know, trade show venues that we've got in the country, but there are constraints that come with that. You know, space is very expensive, you know, and when you do stuff indoors and under a roof, and you know dealing with power, and it becomes sort of a costly thing to do, and to I guess showcase what your exhibitors do day to day it needs to be in a setting like that. And I would imagine that there's a huge amount of creativity that they're afforded by coming to your show that maybe, you know, with other sort of indoor related shows, that they're not quite afforded that same level of flexibility and creativity, which is what drives the industry.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then, yeah, basically, I mean, if you're coming to book a stage, you know, there's no better way than actually standing on the stage yourself. Or if you're going to go and buy a tent or a new, you know, structure, you know, to actually see the structure, to walk into the structure before you, you know, put your money down. It's great to be able to do that. And yeah, over the years, the exhibitors have been taking full advantage of that, and they really do go to town with making some great stages and stands.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's good.
What over the years that you've been involved, and dare I say it, you know, maybe you can't quite remember, you know, the 1984 or the 1985
I think I was still
event,
in nappies almost.
or the full exhibitor list.
Yeah.
But in terms of how the actual visitors have evolved over time, it certainly strikes me in sort of the years that I've worked in the industry, and since 2010, that there's more and more events than there have ever been. More and more outdoor events, particularly smaller ones, you know, 1 or 2 day pop-up events run by local organizations, particularly. Has that shaped at all the exhibitors that come there, or the audience that serves? How has the sort of the change in the industry shifted and manifested itself within the shows? Is it something you've noticed?
Yes. I wouldn't say, yeah. So it's, the show's kind of a reflection of the industry, if you know what I mean. So it's it will kind of reflect what's going on, or what has been going on, what's changed. I mean, when it first started, the show was, you know, there weren't many outdoor events. You know, the show was actually formed from an agricultural world, so agricultural and county show world. That's where my father worked. You know, so it had a bias towards that. And back in the early 1980s, there weren't many music festivals or food festivals around.
Yeah.
You know, there was obviously probably a handful of the big boys that, you know, still exist. And so in the last 40 years, the outdoor event industry and live event industry generally has just exploded. I mean, yeah, it's just grown massively, you know, from a handful of events to hundreds of festivals, you know, from music to food to everything. So to sporting events, you know, mass participation events. And to
when we
local
reference your venues, just go back to what you said about the event, you know, starting in Newark, and then, you know, it's now, you know, its home is very much been in Newbury for a number of years now. They are agricultural showgrounds, aren't they? You know, that's what they fundamentally are. You know, and I live up in Yorkshire, so I've been to the Yorkshire show many times. There's several sort of market towns in the Peak district, you know, not far from where I am, that all have their sort of agricultural shows on a big showground. And it really was, if we go back sort of 40, 50 years, the agricultural shows that took place in counties during those sort of summer months really were the big outdoor events of the time, weren't they?
Absolutely. You know, they attracted, you know, the wider community. You know, they had all sorts of arena entertainment and all sorts going on there. But yeah, so they were definitely, you know, an important role to, you know, they had an important place in the event industry, you know, in the early days. So.
And you know, people think that they struggle. You know, it's a minefield getting 10,000 people into a music festival. You try getting 10,000 cattle, you know,
exactly,
40 herds of sheep in and out of a field on a
exactly,
rainy day.
Exactly.
You know, there's the challenges that nobody's talking about in the industry at the moment. But again, you know, I talk about infrastructure, you know, and you know, regardless of what, I guess, the program content is of the event, you know, the fundamentals remain the same, don't they? You're doing an agricultural show, you've got to get vehicles in. What happens if it's wet? You know, you're going to need somewhere for people to have cover, and you know, people are probably going to get hungry in 2 days stood in a field, you know, showcasing their cattle. So you've got to feed them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, absolutely right. There's a lot of similarities. So
yeah, it's interesting how it has evolved, and I mentioned technology and sort of shaping its part, you know, in there. You know, do you see? Has that shifted as well? The way that technology plays a role within the events industry, has that also manifested itself within the exhibitors and the people that you're seeing actually visiting the Showman show, and the sort of the elements that are now used within the design? Is it not just the sort of the stage and that sort of that big infrastructure that we think about? Is it those sort of preparation and the organizational elements as well that you see?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, although the focus of the show, I mean, again, there's a large focus on the infrastructure, so and infrastructure providers, but we do have technology providers as well. So they'll, anyone running a hire business will have crew, they'll have gear, they'll have all sorts, and they need to manage that. So we see a lot of software companies, specializing in project management, and business management, so they can manage their staff and their assets. And then obviously, the way that the kind of entertainment's changed, we get a lot of drone show providers. That's kind of, relatively, well, I say relatively new. They've been around for a while, but there's been a massive uplift in that kind of tech.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was scrolling through the website this morning, just sort of doing the very vague prep and bits and pieces that I do before a podcast recording, I was reading through the sustainability element of your website, which is a topic that has played a huge part of conversations within the industry now for several years. And I noticed that you've dedicated quite a big chunk of your own event website to talking about sustainability initiatives that, as organizers, you take. You think it's clearly something that as an organization serving the industry, you need to lead on, I presume?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, sustainability is something that's close to our hearts anyway. We're kind of country boys, born and bred. So we have, we've grown up in the countryside basically, and enjoy the natural environment. But we started our sustainability journey probably in earnest back in 2014. But previous to that, we were doing all my father was doing all the bits and bobs that we needed to do, the recycling and the sorting and all that. But obviously, sustainability became a bit of a buzzword. And I've lost my train of thought. But it is important to us, and we feel as an industry event, that's something we're in a position to be able to kind of influence or suggest, recommend the industry and how it operates. And obviously, being an outdoor event, we have an impact, and we recognise that, and we want to address it. And that's what we've been doing for the last 12 years. And I'm a great believer. It also makes good financial sense to be more efficient, which can then obviously be more sustainable. And yeah,
what I like is as well is that you again, not to sort of blow smoke, but you're backing this up. Again, I referenced the website because I saw it, and you said buzzword, and a lot of events, sustainability, they will agree, is something they need to address, but it has become a bit of a buzzword. There's an argument to say that for some events it is a bit of a tick box exercise. They feel that they have to do it because if they don't, they will be looked upon, less favorably by consumers particularly. But what I like on your website is you've not just said, we aim to do sustainable stuff and practices. There's actually stuff on it, facts, figures, things to back it up. 50% of the toilets on site are compost loos. We've reduced the event's water consumption by more than half, from 333 cubic litres in 2015 to 120 in 2024. That you're actually clearly taking active, monitoring of this.
Do you know what? Yeah, it's something that we're quoting numbers is something that we've only recently started doing. I think it's to kind of recognize the work that we've done, because I talk about sustainability in the show quite a bit with other, people in the industry. And I remember someone saying, "Oh, you've got a good grasp of the numbers. You know what's going on." And it's like, well, yeah. And so we're basically putting it out there to say, well, actually, it is achievable. I think we managed to save like 50% of the diesel when we were using diesel back in 2014, by just a simple review of the generator sizes that we were using at the show and what we were powering. And just a simple review managed to cut our fuel bill by 50% the following year. So it was just a simple, we didn't change any tech or anything. We just said, we just had the supplier say, look, are we overpowering this? Are we? And they basically said, yeah, we can halve this. And
yeah. So, and in some respects, you can understand that being the case, because you know, like any outdoor event, you don't want stuff to fall over because
No.
you haven't given people enough juice to do what they need to do. So there is always a tendency in events as a whole is to over egg things,
Absolutely.
redundancy
Let's say.
redundancy for the redundant and the
Mm.
redundant for that. But you know, simple reviews now, and again, the way that equipment, what requires power, you know, an outdoor events, you know, lights, sound, all that obvious stuff. And again, when we go back to the technology discussion, a lot of that now uses significantly less power. If you look at the
Mm.
amplification that drives
Mm.
big sound systems, lighting fixtures now are you know, predominantly, if not all, LED rather than
Yeah.
old-fashioned warm bulbs. So,
Mm.
you know, when you look at how that element of things, I guess, has evolved,
Mm.
naturally our power consumption is going to come down. So it
Mm.
is something that organisers can address, you know,
Mm.
fairly regularly. I would have thought that's the case.
I think this is it. It's you know, when approaching sustainability is to kind of try and do something every year. Don't try and change it all at once, because you will set yourself up for failure. But it's to you know, pick an area and really study it. And over the years, I mean, we started out with waste being an issue because it's obvious, it's visual, and you can see it, and you know, outdoor events have a bad rep with, you know, dirty campsites and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So but so that was our kind of our first kind of target, but then it kind of quickly moved on to power, you know, power generation, and continues to be power generation, to be honest. Right now is we're always looking at ways we can be more efficient or power our event a bit more, you know, smoothly, or looking at the new tech that's coming in and trialing things out. Last year we worked with Grid Fairies, which is kind of part of Ecotricity, the
Right.
power provider, the utilities company, and we used their massive megawatt batteries to power our indoor exhibition hall, and that was the first time that we'd powered the exhibition hall by battery, and
Wow.
and it was great. I mean, these things were massive, you know, and it's these batteries were massive, and so last year it was run off solar power, basically. So
Yes, absolutely. Again, just sort of referencing the sort of the indoor trade shows that take place. I'm pretty confident in saying that that's not something that you could actually look to deliver in the indoor events because of the regulations regarding, you know, powering things off batteries and lithium ion and things like that. So again, going back to sort of the flexibility that you've got and the ability to deliver stuff that actually in the outdoor event world you need to showcase. What a great sort of position that you're in, that you can actually make the decision to go down that route.
No, you're absolutely right, and yeah, and that's what's great. You know, people come to us with an idea, and I'm going to put that out there now. You know, if anybody's got an idea or a new product they want to trial, you know, get in touch, because that's the nature of the show. We want it to be used by the industry to try things out. You know, give it a go, or to, you know, demonstrate stuff. It's yeah, no, so it's a great privilege to be in, that's for sure.
How does the venue themselves, what are their sort of thoughts and views on the event? Do they come along? Do they learn stuff about other events that they're hosting within their venue by coming to your event?
They do, yeah. I mean, they're obviously a part of the event, and I mean, they're great to work with in the sense that they do kind of leave us alone, and they'll help us when we need, which is great. But they do come along to the event, and they're there shopping around. They're picking up supplies for their own show that they have on the venue, as well as yeah, picking up tips to improve the venue.
What you mentioned sort of every year small steps on the sustainability side of things, but you know, wider to that, are you always looking, you know, to evolve the show? Obviously, you will always want new exhibitors and people to come on board, but in terms of changes year to year, has it been a slow but steady evolution every year? And sort of what are you looking forward to for this year?
Yeah, it has been. It is a steady evolution. I mean, our focus is very much to kind of maintain the show. It's not necessarily to grow it, but we understand that things need to evolve, and you know, to keep relevant and maintained. But also, there's new bits and bobs out there, bits of tech and bits of software and services that we could use ourselves. I mean, one really useful bit of kit that we've been using for a couple of years now is our new exhibitor portal, which you'll know Adam from Fair.
Yeah.
And that has really revolutionized us internally, by communicate how we communicate with our exhibitors and how we get information from our exhibitors, and just help. And it's really helps us kind of provide a better service for them, as well as get all the relevant information for
Sure.
us.
Yeah.
So we're always kind of looking at bits and bobs like that. We keep our ears to the ground for new ideas and how we can improve ourselves. We're a small team. There's only 3 of us that work in the office, so anything like that helps us, is great. We're up for that.
Yeah, I'm always, staggered by these events, that when you find out, oh, there's only 3 or 4 people behind the scenes, you think, crikey, what's their email inbox like?
Well, yeah,
what is their job?
busy.
What is their job list like?
Yeah. Well, this is it. You have to we have to really kind of switch between what role we're doing. One day I might be doing sales. Next minute you're kind of project management. Next minute it's business development. Next minute it's things like this. So it's
but I would always argue that gives you a great end-to-end understanding. If you're as involved in the event as you obviously you and the family obviously is, then inevitably that's going to give you better communication, better relationship with your exhibitors and your visitors if you really understand it end to end. I'm certain that reflects.
It does, and we do pride ourselves on that. From the initial phone call we might get from an exhibitor wanting to book space, they don't know anything about us. They'll speak to one of 3 of us, and that's who they'll be dealing with right through to the end, until they leave the show. So and because it's us, it's a family business, we've got skin in the game. We want to provide the best, friendliest service as possible, because it's our heads that will roll. We don't have anyone up the ladder that we can blame. It's us that has, it's us who takes all the all the credit and the blame.
All the credit and the blame. In equal measure.
Absolutely.
In equal measure sometimes. Dare I ask, and I'm sure you've been asked this, many times before, about the possibility of doing, is it going to remain just an annual event? Once a year you'll do this. Has there ever been scope or discussion of doing something even on a smaller basis at other times of the year to maybe sort of keep things in people's minds? Marketeers will tell us about this sort of year-round engagement that you've now got to have with your audiences. What are the plans? Very much to keep it as that big annual event?
It is, yeah. We talk about this. Well, actually, we never say never, because we talk about this on a regular basis, because things change, demand changes, and we have trialed other events. Other Showman show. We held one up north for 2 years. We held one in Northern Ireland for 2 years, and both of those, they washed their faces, what have you, but they weren't really doing. They didn't really take off, because everyone was coming down to the main event, to the main show. And the way that we engage with our audience all year round is that we have monthly newsletters, basically, and we just basically invite our exhibitors to take advantage of that, submit news, submit any product releases or what they're doing throughout the year, that we can just kind of trickle feed our audience until things ramp up for October. But and there are also kind of lots of other industry events out there, so it's quite crowded in a sense. There's a lot going on, basically.
And I guess in many respects that sort of to answer my own question, it's in October. It's a great time of year to do it, isn't it? It's at the end of the the traditional British summer event season. So people have got stuff to reflect on, they've got stuff to celebrate, they're maybe winding down a little bit, the diaries are a little bit lighter than they are in May, June, July, August, September. So from a calendar point of view, again, to answer my own question, I guess that having sort of that October period sewn up for your event is a great period of time to have.
It is, yeah, and it will always be October. A lot of people always say, why didn't you make it spring? And it's like, well, spring's too late. The weather will be better, but everyone will be busy.
And they'll be booked.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be booked. Yeah, exactly. So we won't have an event. But with October, it falls after a busy season. So hopefully that people have had a good year. They're feeling optimistic, and they are then already thinking about the following year. So it's the perfect time for them for the industry to meet, to reflect, and start booking for next year.
How one sort of final thing that I really wanted to ask today is how you feel about the fact that the event seemingly has become a real sort of social fixture on people's calendars who work in the industry. It's not just a chance for them to come and do business and research and explore suppliers and companies, but from my recollection and my understanding and what I've witnessed, is that people really do see it as a social thing. There's a lot of people laughing and joking and walking around. There seems to be a lot of social interaction that takes place there.
Yeah, there is, and we take great pleasure in witnessing that, and the joy that people get out of it. If people just want to come and have a drink and just walk the showground, they might not necessarily want to do any business or anything. That's great. The event is for the industry. It's for organisers. It's for the supply chain. It's for venues. It's for everyone. And that's reflected in our exhibitor list. We don't just have hirers exhibiting, but we also have manufacturers. So they're there selling to suppliers. The hirers are there pitching to event organisers. We want everybody there, and because where it is in the year, the calendar year, again, people have been out on site. They've been on the road for the last 6 months. They want that kind of break, that to see their friends, their colleagues, their clients, and just give them a cuddle and say, what a year that was, or what plans you got for next year. It's that, and it's
maybe there's a new feature of the show, Cuddle Corner.
Cuddle Corner.
Yeah. Have you had a busy summer event season?
Yeah,
Cuddle Corner to get the free hugs.
Free hugs, yeah. Whether it be good or bad season, absolutely. But
well, long may it continue in that respect. And I'm I've got a hunch actually that after several years of not being able to attend because of my own sort of diary clashes and work that I have going on at that time of year, I'm quietly confident that you'll actually see me there this year.
You must come.
Maybe even with the event industry news microphone, the orange microphone will be broken out of its emergency case and be put back into the wild. But, discussions are still ongoing between my people and other people. I'm quietly confident that
we shall actively encourage you to do that. So please do.
It'd be
fantastic. You'll be very welcome.
For those who haven't come across the website or looked at it before, let's make sure that people can find you and do their own little bits of research and look into it. If people want to look at the show a bit more, give us the website, Johnny.
Okay, so the website is showmans-directory.co.uk. Please do all the information about the show, when and where it is. You can already register to visit if you just want to come along and check it out. Our exhibitor list is already up. We've got over 190 companies already signed up to exhibit. So it's all looking good. We've got a couple of new things this year. If we've got time,
please.
We've extended our indoor exhibition hall to 95 meters, which is the largest it's ever been since in its 42-year history.
Wow!
And we've almost sold out of that. And that's proved really popular this year. And we're also launching a new feature called the Working Hub this year. And that's literally, we're creating a space for literally people to come and do some work. If they want to send an email, do a voice call, or just have a quick meeting, it's going to be free and open to all, because it's something that we realize it's an open field, and there's actually nowhere for people just to kind of go and sit down and do an email. So
and we see more and more events doing this, don't we? But business events, because yes, there's a lot of benefit to people attending, but it is also a commitment, and it's important that the organisers recognise that it's a commitment for people to take 1 or 2 days out of their day-to-day work diary to come and visit. So to give people the opportunity to maybe stay connected, to not feel like they're having to ditch work for a couple of days and then it's going to cause them a backlog. It's such a great thing to have now, that where people can go and sit quietly, check a few emails, have a video meeting, meet face to face with somebody. It's a great sort of facility to have, isn't it, at any event?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're doing that this year. So it's just to add a bit of value to the show for both visitors and exhibitors.
Fabulous. It's been great talking to you today, or
Likewise,
talking
James.
with you today. I can't believe it's taken this long to do it, but now I firmly believe we should make this an annual thing. You know, about
Well,
this time of year. Let's talk about the show the year before. Let's talk about what's new. Just
yeah,
come on and have a chat every year and let us know
will
what's
do.
happening.
No, I'd love that. That'd be lovely. It's always
It,
good to see you, James.
It'd be great. Just a couple of mentions before we wrap up today for some bits and pieces at our end of the operation. If you're listening to today's podcast on your podcast audio platform, thank you very much for doing so. Great to have you on board. Don't forget to subscribe so that you get all the episodes as they drop, whether that be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all of those sort of different audio podcast platforms. Make sure that you are subscribed. Please, as well, if you've listened to this today via audio, make sure that you take a few minutes to hop over to eventindustrynews.com. You can find video versions of all of the podcasts, as well as things like the A to Z supplier directory. If you work in the industry and you're looking for a product, service, or a supplier, the chances are you'll find it on the A to Z supplier directory over on eventindustrynews.com, as well as all the sort of special features and supplements and good stuff like that that the team at Event Industry News are constantly putting out there. Which brings us sort of nicely to the end of today's episode. And I must wrap up by saying once again a big thank you to our brand new Event Industry News podcast sponsor, Present Communications. Present provides broadcast quality live, hybrid, and virtual event production trusted by organizations where reliability really matters. From corporate town halls and conferences to high-profile live streams, they design and deliver fully resilient systems that work first time. Big thanks to the team at Present Comms for supporting the podcast and making it possible. And my thanks finally, of course, to my guest today from the Showman Show, Johnny Lance. John, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'll see you very soon, my friend.
No worries. Thank you very much, James. You take care.